In Greece, thousands of protesters, mostly students, demanded justice for the victims of a train crash that killed 57 people in 2023. The Syrian resistance movement has taken over the Naval Command Center and other strategic positions in Latakia after clashes with de facto government forces. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva handed over expropriated plots of land in Campo do Meio, Minas Gerais. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. In Greece, thousands of protesters, mostly students, demanded justice for the victims of a deadly train crash that killed 57 people 2 years ago. A group of Greek students have called for a new protest on Friday against the government in connection with the collision that took place in the Thessaly town of Tempe in February 2023. The call comes after several recent demonstrations in the capital Athens, where security forces arrested dozens of protesters in connection with an alleged series of riots. Demonstrators have rallied in front of Parliament chanting slogans and demands of accountability and punishment for those responsible and accusing the government of negligence. Ukrainian troops have lost over 10,000 soldiers in recent days, according to reports from the Russian Defense Ministry. The agency also confirmed the surrender of at least 35 Kiev servicemen who were taken into custody of the Russian forces as prisoners of war. In addition, the Russian armed forces carried out 7 massive attacks on several military installations of the Kiev regime, destroying 21 aerial bombs and 5 HIMARS shells, achieving the liberation of 4 Ukrainian occupied localities. And a new attack by armed groups in central Sudan has left at least 21 people dead. According to local media, several villages in the town of Al-Kamlin in Gezira state were targeted by paramilitaries between March 5th and the 6th. In this context, the civilian organization Gezira Conference denounced that the region is suffering shortages of food and medical supplies, resulting in the death of dozens of people, including the elderly and children. Since April 2023, Sudan has been facing an internal conflict between the army and their paramilitary rapid support forces, which has resulted in more than 20,000 deaths and forced displacement of more than 10 million civilians, according to the United Nations. And the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned that Ebola cases were spreading in 5 out of 146 districts in Uganda. In this regard, local authorities registered Ebola cases rose up to 14, also confirming 2 deaths from the disease. They further detailed that about 3 hospitals in Kampala have been treating Ebola patients or suspected cases, an information that had not been made public before, in order to avoid alarming the population. Tracing contacts is key to tackle the spread of Ebola, which is transmitted through contact with the body fluids of an infected person or contaminated materials. So far, there are no approved vaccines for the strain of the disease that's infecting people in Uganda. In Mali, the government is suspending licenses for artisanal gold mining granted to foreign companies. The decision came after a series of fatal accidents in the country, one of Africa's top 3 gold producers. So far, accidents at mining sites have claimed the lives of dozens of people, with recent incidents taking place in the Ilikoro region south of the country in January and the Kiyes region to the southwest in February. Artisanal gold mining is estimated to produce around 30 tons of gold a year and represents 6% of Mali's annual gold production. Tensions have been rising between some mining companies and the military authorities, who are demanding that companies pay money and comply with a new mining code. And Zimbabwean Foreign Minister Amon Murwira announced Thursday his country had officially submitted its application to join BRICS. Murwira said so in a press briefing alongside his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, as part of his agenda in Moscow. The minister further highlighted the commitment of Zimbabwe to comply with all BRICS membership requirements. Likewise, the senior diplomat stressed the importance of BRICS as the foremost platform for economic cooperation. In addition, the authority noted his nation's will to enhance economic ties and global partnerships within the alliance. We now have our first short break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Syrian resistance movement has taken over the Naval Command Center and other strategic positions in Latakia after clashes with de facto government forces. A former commander of the Syrian army, Suhail al-Hassan, member of the resistance formation dubbed the Coastal Shield Regiment, assured that they have been keeping up with their fight against the occupying foreign troops with the purpose of overthrowing the current de facto government. In this context, the death toll following the repression of protesters by the coup regime amounted to 70, mostly members of the resistance.
90% of Syrian coastal areas are under the control of these groups after clashes with the new authorities this afternoon.
The Public Security Department in Homs announced a curfew from 10 p.m. on Friday night until 8 a.m. on Saturday morning amid intense protests against the current regime. Meanwhile, the military is moving into the Chapelet region and its surroundings in Latakia to re-establish lost control over the area. During the clashes, the de facto government has reported attacks on checkpoints and patrols in and around Chapelet. Israeli occupation forces imposed severe restrictions on Muslim worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque during the first Friday prayer of the holy month of Ramadan. Precisely, Israeli forces have denied the entry of several worshippers from the occupied West Bank and other parts of the Palestinian territories under the pretext of not having the necessary permits, while settlers are allowed to walk freely on the esplanade. Occupation forces are reportedly checking the identities of young men at the entrances to the old city of Jerusalem and at the mosque's doors. Al-Aqsa, located in occupied Jerusalem, is one of the holiest sites for Muslims celebrating Ramadan this month. The restrictive actions constitute another violation of the fragile ceasefire by the Zionist Tel Aviv regime. And in this regard, the Israeli government increased restrictions at Jerusalem's Kalandia military checkpoint, limiting the number of Muslims allowed in from the West Bank and effectively denying the entry to thousands more. Worshippers trying to reach the Al-Aqsa Mosque for Ramadan have had to obtain previous clearance and undergo thorough security checks, where only men over the age of 55, women over 50, and children under 12 are permitted in, while Jews and settlers are allowed free passage.
We are completely barred, whether Palestinians, Egyptians, or Arab Israelis. We are all barred from praying at Al-Aqsa, yet Jews and settlers are allowed to.
I gave the soldier the ID, he told me I am good to go. I got the green light, but at the end they told me I am not allowed to go further.
We have the right to worship as do all Muslims, but they do not recognize this right.
UN experts condemn Israel's decision to prevent the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza, marking this a clear violation of international law. Specialists warn that these decisions from the Zionist government undermine any possibility of peace. According to them, the deliberate cutting of food and the constant threats in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan is not only evidence of extreme cruelty, but points to a clear attempt to end the ceasefire agreement reached in Qatar. We now have our second short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, we'll be right back. Welcome back. In Brazil on Friday, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva took part in a ceremony to hand over expropriated plots of land in Campo de Maio, Minas Gerais. At the event organized by the Landless Workers Movement, the President signed 7 decrees that aim to move forward the agrarian reform, totaling more than 13,000 hectares and over $30 million in investments, which have the potential to assist around 800 families. In addition, as part of the Terra da Gente program, the head of state allocated over 12,000 plots of land to families camped in rural settlements, totaling more than 300,000 hectares spread across 24 states nationwide. The action is a victory for the 459 families living in the territory after years of struggle for the land. And in southern Chile, the Mapuche firefighter Gabriel Toro died in the line of duty while he was trying to put out the ravaging wildfires in the Araucanía region. The Mapuche firefighter was taken to the Victoria Hospital where he passed away as he had been seriously injured by a falling tree in the Ericilla community. The presidential delegate for the Araucanía region, Domingo Abdala Abarzúa, confirmed that the facts. The authority further unfolded that experts would perform an autopsy on Toro's body in Temuco City.
We want to regret the sensitive death of a forestry brigade worker of the company CMPC who lost his life a few minutes ago while firefighting in the commune of Arcilla. We send our most sincere condolences to his fellow brigade members and also to his family. On the other hand, we are accompanied by the Carabinero Chief of Zone, General Yanez, in the spot where there was a fire in the afternoon that crossed the road, resulting in the burning of 5 vehicles. We are in the sector, near the Sector Fernandez, on 5 South Route. And we can inform that, at this moment, the traffic is being restored at least in the line that goes from north to south, and we hope we can also re-establish soon the roadway that goes from south to north.
And in Venezuela, the legislature unanimously rejected the coercive measures supported by the far-right opposition following the revocation of the license of the U.S. oil company Chevron to operate in the country. More details with our colleague Leonardo Urieta.
All the benches of the different political tendencies in the National Assembly expressed their rejection of this new measure of the U.S. government against the U.S. oil company Chevron, revoking its license to operate in Venezuela. The parliamentarians of the government party support the declarations of President Nicolas Maduro, where he assured that these sanctions against the U.S. oil company were promoted by a reduced sector of the opposition related to the international extreme right.
Here it is, at your service and at your orders, the Simón Bolívar Liberator Organic Law against the imperialist blockade and in defense of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We urge, dear prosecutor, that this law be applied and that all those who have promoted these actions against Venezuela pay with jail, pay with disqualifications, pay with the law of forfeiture of ownership, that the full weight of this law fall upon them.
The deputies to the National Assembly recall that the more than 1,000 illegal sanctions applied by Washington will not stop the will of the Venezuelan people to be free and sovereign.
Venezuelans are courageous men and women. We are libertarian men and women. We are men and women who of course profess the self-determination of peoples, and in this context we will not accept imposition of any nature. We the workers are ready, prepared to assume responsibility for production in Venezuela, including the entire productive class at the national level.
Por su parte, la oposición democrática
For its part, the alternative democratic opposition, which is active in the legislative branch, condemned in a united manner that some extremist spokespersons are calling for economic sanctions against Venezuela.
Lo grave es que haya venezolanos que pidan que eso ocurra.
The bad thing is that there are Venezuelans who ask for this to happen. The bad thing is that there are Venezuelans who are happy with this. The bad thing is that there are Venezuelans who aspire to be deputies, governors, and the legislative council and want the country to go bad. And that there are sanctions, but they have double morals. They talk horrorously about the country, but tomorrow we see them wanting to register to be candidates for governors and mayors.
Para ser candidatos a gobernadores y alcaldes.
Y entonces estos pseudos dirigentes.
And then these pseudo-leaders go to the United States to ask Donald Trump, to ask the great powers to also come and sanction Venezuela? Do they not feel sympathy? Do they not have a heart? Do they not have children? Do they not have mothers, fathers, elderly people in their homes?
Venezuela crecerá y prevalecerá ante los
Venezuela will grow and prevail in the face of the constant attacks of the U.S. imperialism and its allies in Venezuela. This was stated by the deputy and historical parliamentary leader of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Fernando Soto Rojas.
Pero nosotros resistiremos y venceremos.
We will resist and we will win. We know that imperialism cannot be granted even a little bit. As Che Guevara said, we will continue developing our national industry, our national economy, strengthening the Bolivarian revolution.
Nuestra economía nacional, fortaleciendo la revolución bolivariana.
El Estado venezolano en su conjunto advierte
The Venezuelan state as a whole warns that any Venezuelan who calls for sanctions against the country will be punished based on the provisions of the Simón Bolívar Organic Law to protect Venezuela from the attacks of the White House.
En la Cámara de Carlos Quintero, Leonardo Urrieta, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, welcomed on Thursday at the Palace of the Revolution in Havana the ambassadors of the Arab and Islamic countries accredited to the country. This is the second year in a row that the Cuban head of state has welcomed representatives of the diplomatic corps during the holy month of Ramadan. The meeting was a testimony to the excellent level of bilateral relations. At the meeting, authorities of the Caribbean island expressed their best wishes for well-being and prosperity, while the ambassador of Yemen to Cuba and delegation's head, Mohammed Saleh Nasser, reiterated the position of this community of nations against the blockade and the inclusion of Cuba in the notorious list drawn up by Washington of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism.
The presence tonight of President Díaz-Canel, the Prime Minister and other Cuban leaders reflects the depth of the ties and relations between Cuba and our Arab countries. The month of Ramadan is a month of blessings. It is a month that brings us the best. It is a holy month. It is an opportunity to strengthen solidarity, cooperation and tolerance between us, the Arab countries, and we take this opportunity to highlight these values that distinguish us. We also want to highlight the role that Cuba plays in supporting just causes and, first and foremost, the Palestinian cause.
The Federation of Indonesian Buddhists held Friday in Central Java an award ceremony to commend those women contributing to the development of Buddhism. At the brink of the International Women's Day, 80 Buddhist nuns, leaders coming from 11 countries, gathered at the Borobudur Temple, the largest Buddhist temple worldwide. The nuns, also known as bhikkhunis, not only attended the celebration but also prayed for those women in need over the world. The religious attendees came from countries such as Malaysia, Singapore, China, India, and Nepal.
By bestowing such awards, we are recognizing the role of the recipients as these women have contributed to the development of Buddhism in their respective countries and to the empowerment of women. This event is organized on the occasion of International Women's Day. The number of participants, 80, is really a coincidence. We didn't limit the number, but it's just the lucky number that came up. 80 bhikkhunis coming to Borobudur in Indonesia.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.